Hi, my name is Angela, and this is my informative speech. I bet we can all agree that for the most part, our name is something unique and special to ourselves. We got it for a couple reasons that our parents chose, but it's meaningful in its own light. But what goes into receiving a name? How do you pick from so many? I guarantee that if you go home and ask your parents tonight, that there's probably a wonderful story behind your name. My parents told me that they named me Angela because I was their angel, and that's something special that filled the void in their life. After listening to my speech, you will have a better understanding of what it takes to name a child. For those of you that already have children, you can probably relate. And for those of you that don't have the fortune of having children yet, hopefully this will play a role later on in life when you get to name your special bundle of joy. I will begin by explaining picking a name in general. Naming a children can be a wonderful experience, but it is also a name that we have to remember sticks with them for the rest of their lives. Picking the right name for your children can be one of the most scary and daunting tasks of your life. You, as the mother, may want one name, whereas your partner may want a completely different name, something that's special to him and his family. Where do I begin, you ask yourself? BabyCenter.com says that it's important to set guidelines with your partner so that you both are on the same page and can begin looking for names. It is also important to make a list and have it handy so if you think of a name, you can jot it down to have on hand. Maybe you get to pick the first name and your husband or spouse gets to pick the middle name. This can be a good guideline and way to go about it. Sound and compatibility are also important. How will your baby's name sound when somebody is yelling for him across the playground, when a teacher is taking attendance? Jack Daniel McHenry might be a nice name at first, but later on in life people may start to wonder if your parents were alcoholics or if they were drunk and drinking it when the child was conceived. Children can be very cruel, and naming your children can be something very important to look at. Once you have set some guidelines and figured out the route that you want to go in naming your child, it's important to look at things such as the gender of the baby and the uniqueness in the name. Are you going to be blessed with a girl or a boy? Maybe you're having twins, one of each sex, 2 girls, maybe even triplets. Heaven help you. The sex of your baby is an important element in the name that you choose. Do you want an older name from a different time period, and maybe just has nothing to do with your family but is just special? About.com has a pregnancy section that tells us that today's world has done away with the 20 usual names that were common back in earlier years. No longer will you find yourself in a room with 6 other Matthews, 4 other Stacys, or 10 other Marys. It just doesn't happen. Nowadays, there are so many more unique names to choose from. For example, we named our son Jackson, but we spelled it different. We spelled it Jaxin, which is unique as you don't see it spelled that way very often, even though you may see other children with the same name. Naming girls or boys has become such a chore and indecisive mess that they even have books hundreds of pages long with names A to Z in them. Could you imagine going through a book, 1 page at a time, hundreds upon thousands of names, and trying to find that one special name that is unique to your child? It could be just quite overwhelming and very stressful for a pregnant mother. Now that we have touched on the sex and the uniqueness, it is also important to think of a first name that fits with your last name. Have you been so busy thinking about first and middle names that you've forgotten all about the name that tags along after it? Squidoo.com shows us that it's very important to pick a name that goes well with your last name, and also not to pick a first name that has the same amount of letters as the last name. Don't give your child a name that rhymes either. This can open up a world of teasing later on in life from children, because as I mentioned earlier, children can be very cruel, and teasing and bullying is more prominent in today's world. I'm sure we are all familiar with the movie The Wedding Singer, when Julia is getting married, and she's upstairs rehearsing her wedding and introducing herself as Julia Gulia. She begins crying because the name together just sounds so awful. It is only that she starts smiling when she introduces herself as Julia Hart, and she really finds pure happiness in the name. A name can mean everything. Initials is also something to look at. Benjamin Allen Dickmeyer may not be a name to go with because the initials are going to spell bad. Do we really want children to say, "Oh, you're bad, your parents think you're bad"? We don't want that. You need to think of a name that'll go with them and provide little as possible criticism. Try to think of your children's future when you're choosing a name. Today I shared important information to consider when naming your child. Set up guidelines with your partner, things that you can follow along, and ways that you can find to agree on the name that you're going to choose. Are you having a girl or a boy? Girl names or boy names can be the same, but uniqueness is also a very important piece of naming your child. And try not to give your name a child that rhymes. As I mentioned, it just opens up room for teasing and ridicule by children. Children are very mean. I have printed out some handouts with names on them that I'd like you to circle your favorites and possibly compare with a classmate if there's some spare time. I think that most of us will find that we in fact have different taste and prefer different names that are meaningful to us in their own ways. I thank you for listening to my informative speech today, and I hope that this has provided some valuable information for the future when the time comes to name your bundle of joy. Thank you.